Suspicious person followed me to some friend's house all the way to the back door in broad daylight. About a year ago, in January on a weekend, I went to visit at the house some of my friends were staying at for the school year. At the time, I was staying in a dorm about 5 to 7 minutes away by just walking. The path to get there is basically a moderately popular city area, with several shops and restaurants on the way and within the area as well. So anyways, I head over at about 1 p.m. and pass by several people, and as I take the turn to head towards the house, I notice that the white man, about in his late 40s I just passed, stopped in his tracks and is looking right at me from the corner of my eye. I didn't think much of it at the time, so I just headed towards the house without paying any heed to it. I reach the front door of the house, ring the doorbell, and knock, but nobody answers at first. So I leave the porch to go to the back door, and as I turn around, I see that same man walking down the sidewalk looking at me, and that's when I get really suspicious. There's absolutely nothing down in this direction, aside from more houses, and all other shops and restaurants are basically in the opposite direction. So at this point, I'm a little worried. It was painfully obvious that he was doing whatever just for me. Anyways, I walk around the house on this little roadway and finally reach the back door, knock, and then I once again see that same man just watching me, so I stared back briefly. I couldn't see his facial expression since I wasn't wearing my contacts or glasses at the time, and I didn't particularly feel any malicious intent from the blurriness. But no matter what he was thinking, it was still creepy to me. Our stare down was interrupted when a friend opens the door for me, and I finally enter the house. I guess nobody heard me when I knocked on the front door, since the only person home was cooking lunch in the kitchen and didn't hear me the first time. I didn't look back to see if he was still there, and I didn't tell anyone about the encounter for whatever reason. In the end, absolutely nothing happened as a result of that man. This definitely isn't as dangerous or creepy as the other stories on here, and honestly, I wasn't extremely afraid during the encounter. My nearsightedness probably lessened the creepiness of the whole situation. During the whole thing, he didn't say a word or call out to me, and he definitely didn't live on that road, since the only people who lived there were my friends and other Chinese students. He didn't exactly look suspicious, or particularly stand out either. Guy in the parking lot. My husband and I just finished doing some shopping on a very cold wintry day. We returned to our car and were about to leave when a guy suddenly appeared by the driver's side window. He did the roll down your window cranking motion. Curious, my husband did so, but only a crack. This guy seemed fairly normal, with a gentle smile on his face, but he was in shirt sleeves on a frigid January day, so we were a bit cautious. He started asking us about ourselves. Were we in love? Yes, we answered. Ah, that's wonderful. Are you married? Yes, we are. Ah, that's lovely. Any children? Not yet. That's when his entire demeanor changed. Do you remember when Bilbo Baggins wanted his ring back in Fellowship of the Ring and his face morphed? I swear that's what happened with this guy. He hissed, "Don't! Children ruin your life." We gravely promised to take his words under advisement. Then we hightailed it out of there as fast as we could. Maybe I should be worried. So about 2 weeks ago, I finally kicked out a terrible flatmate. We've been friends since we moved in back together in September, but since January his life has spiraled. He's hooked up with a new girlfriend who was rude to me and bitched about me to him. He got fired from his job, stopped leaving the flat, and just lay in bed drinking all the time. He was getting aggressive with me and refusing to return stuff of mine he borrowed, searching my room, refusing to pay rent, refusing to clean, etc. I started asking him to leave in February, and it took me threatening to change the locks and telling his friend I was willing to call the police to remove him if I had to before he finally left. When he did leave, he trashed my flat, emptied my freezer of everything he wanted, propped it open so the rest of the stuff there would spoil, and walked out with my wireless router, laptop, projector, and some of my kitchen stuff as well. His room was an absolute disaster. Bottles of pee on every surface, moldy plates under the bed, with the mold actually growing off them and onto the floor. Sheets hadn't been changed in months, and he left behind everything he didn't want. So I'm going to have to arrange for his bed and mattress to be taken to the dump. I thought this sucked, but as I'm pretty sure he's going through some mental issues right now, I thought he'd probably get himself sorted, and I get an apology or something. 6 to 9 months down the line. I've had similar people do similar stuff before, and I figured at least it's over. I don't have to deal with his crap now. However, last week I came home from my first day at a new job, by the way, to find a card from the animal protection inspector. Turns out the ex-flatmate had phoned them up and claimed my cat was being abused. She was apparently thin and unfed, living in a filthy flat with broken glass and razor blades all over the floor. I explained the situation to the inspector, and though he won't confirm who made the call, I do manage to get confirmation from someone else who confronted him. I chalked it up as childishness and pretty much decide I'm done, even if he apologizes in the future. I don't think I want anything more to do with anyone who could do that. Then Monday morning, about 3 a.m., I get woken by 3 silent phone calls. Each time I wake up, answer the phone, and no one says anything. I think I hear breathing, but I'm very asleep and not sure. I unplug the phone and it remains unplugged. This has never happened before. The landline isn't the number I give out to people, but of course, ex-flatmate has the number. Tonight, I can't say this was him. It could have been someone lost. I might be a little paranoid. It just spooked me, but tonight at 2 a.m., I heard someone walk up the stairs of my building, stop right outside my door, and then just stand there for 4 minutes. Then they turned around and went back down the stairs and out the front door again. This has never happened before. I know ex-flatmate is a huge fan of horror movies and owns a couple of weapons. His machete and his little axe used to sit in our kitchen. I don't think he'll get violent, and so far I've not called the police. I don't think police would help with whatever mental issue thing is going on with him right now. I don't think police would take me at all seriously, especially as the animal protection guy didn't seem all that bothered by it when I explained he was being used to harass me, and I doubt any of what he's actually done is illegal, except taking my stuff, which I can't prove, as he'll likely just deny it. So yeah, if anything else weird happens, I'll update, but for now, advice? Don't call the cops. Per usual. I'm a long-time lurker but first-time poster. Some quick background information before I begin. I live in a rural Midwestern state. I was 18 years old at the time when this story takes place in my first semester of college. My university was only a half-hour drive from my house, so I decided to live at home and save money instead of living in the dorms. Anyway, on to the story. So it was a chilly January morning, and I was being a typical teen, blaring my mixed CD and just kind of zoning out. The only thing that would keep me awake on my way to an 8 a.m. math class as I drove the highway to school. Now this highway was surrounded by nothing but cornfields and forests, with surprisingly not much traffic. The kind of drive where you better have fueled up before you started. I had the cruise control going 65 in a 55, again like a stupid teen. I was about halfway there, coming around a turn, when a deer jumped in front of my car. I'm an animal lover, so I couldn't hit it. Instead, I veered right, thankfully missing it. However, in the split second afterwards, I was about to hit a fence, and for some reason, my only thought was, I don't want to pay any property damage, so I overcorrected to the left, and ended up flipping my car twice across the highway, landing in the ditch on the opposite side, facing the way I'd come. Since the car was still in cruise control, it started moving again and I panicked. I immediately shut it off. I sat there a moment in shock and shaking, this being my first car accident. I noticed blood dripping down onto my lap but couldn't find the source. Blood had actually splattered not only all over me but all over my car as well. I started freaking out and called my mom, who told me to get out of the car quickly, since I didn't know whether gas was leaking or anything, then said to immediately call the police, which is where it gets weird. I had to force my door open since it was bent in, but finally got out of the car and walked up to stand next to the highway, then called the police. As soon as the operator picked up and asked me what the emergency was, I told her I needed an ambulance. As I was describing my location, this old, school-rusted pickup truck with two hillbillies straight from a horror movie came driving up out of the woods. They began every bit as a stranger danger as you'd expect. I began to get an uneasy feeling in my stomach since I was standing literally in the middle of nowhere with these people. Pulling up a few yards away, they motioned for me to come closer. Me, not being born yesterday, shook my head no and kept still. "You alright?" the passenger called out to me. "Yeah, I think so," was all I could think of to say in my shocked state, as I was also on the line with the dispatcher. "Who are you on the phone with?" he asked. This was an odd question, making me feel even more concerned since I was all alone. I decided I'd make it well known who I was speaking to. "The police. They know where I am." "Oh, you don't need to call the cops. Just hang up. We'll take you wherever you need to go. Hop in. We'll make room for you." The operator sounded worried herself now and asked, "Who is that? Why are they telling you not to talk to the police?" My head was swimming from the car accident, blood loss, and now this weird situation, and I just blurted out the first thing that popped into my head. "I don't know, some random guys in a truck." Thinking fast on her part, she told me she was going to send over police as well, and told me to stay on the line with her until he arrived. The hillbillies tried once more, driving up a little closer to where they were, only a few feet away. "Come on, there's a gas station not far from here. We'll take you there and wait with you till you get picked up. Just hop in." Luckily, just as they were talking, the squad car pulled up on the highway shoulder, and the policeman began to get out of his car. The driver of the truck looked up, saw the guy, and peeled out of there without another word. By that point, I was about to pass out, so the policeman helped me over to his car and sat me in the passenger seat until the ambulance got there. I started to think what might have happened if I hadn't gone on the phone with dispatch before they showed up. I was too weak from the accident to have fought back at all if they had tried anything, so creepy hillbillies who wanted me to hang up on the police and get in their dilapidated truck. Let's not ever meet again. I've had a stalker for the past 5 years. And I think eventually he may kill me. This dude added me on Facebook back in January of 2011. At the time, I was really addicted to Robitussin. As weird as this sounds, I was 18 years old and curious about drugs and couldn't find any besides weed. There was about a 2-month period that I drank Robitussin almost every night. This was years ago, and I eventually quit and never looked back. But I was bored and fresh out of high school. My girlfriend was still in high school, and I'd sit up and talk to her until 11 or midnight and drink my Robitussin around the time she went to bed. So I stayed up all night tripping with nothing better to do. This guy added me and started talking to me. I thought he was harmless. He lived in a few towns over in a community that has a lot of rich people in it. He was 30 years old and lived in his mom's basement, completely obsessed with fish and completely addicted to benzos and opiates to the point where he acted completely crazy if he wasn't on them. Within a month of talking to him, he told me that he loved me and that I was his best friend. I blocked him shortly after this and wrote it off. A couple years go by, one of my close friends die, and I go through a rough patch. I ended up deleting my Facebook and making a new one a few months later. Well, this guy eventually found me and added me as well. I started talking to him. He was nice, and it was comforting when a friend died. But then he started telling me I was his best friend again, and he loves me again. It was weird. I blocked him again and moved on. Fast forward to around 2014, he made a new Facebook account and somehow found me and re-added me. I ended up chilling with him once in his mom's basement. We smoked pot and listened to some music. It wasn't that bad that time. I know this sounds like a terrible idea, but I was drinking in his town and he hit me up, so I thought I'd stop by. This guy had been somewhat of an enigma for years, and I wanted to see what he was like in person. This was when things got weird. He told me that I could come over and do whatever I wanted, sexually to him. At one point, a couple months after this, I told him I was straight, but he insisted. He sent me multiple videos over the years, which are very strange. Weird drone music playing with a green light in the background, and action figures on strings moving in slow motion, saying their film tests for one of the movies he's making. I've blocked him multiple times, but he always makes a new Facebook within the next few months and re-adds me and has some bullshit excuse that doesn't make sense for why he made one. Oh, my brother's girlfriend has been harassing me. He added my roommate last year and got way weirder with my roommate than he ever did with me. He bought my roommate a video game at one point for Christmas and had it shipped to our apartment, which means that if he wanted to figure it out, he could easily figure out our address. My roommate ended up blocking him. This guy gets angry at everybody for not sitting on Facebook and talking to him, accuses you for being an unloyal friend when we're sleeping for school or work because we won't sit up and talk to him till 5 in the morning. Then when you try to explain yourself, he accuses you of thinking you're better than him for being in school and work. Then he asks us to send him nudes and offers us $200 for videos of us beating off and pics of our cock. When we stop talking to him, he finds a way to contact us and tells us we're family. He collects Social Security in his mom's basement and spends all of it on drugs and shows and weed and shrooms and Xanax and all that shit. He tells us ridiculous lies like he's going to Berkeley. His age has somewhat went from 30 in 2011 to turning 32 this year in 2016. He's added multiple people from our friends and family over the years, most of which have blocked him, and he's tried to turn us against them at some point shortly afterwards. We obviously never fall for his shit. This is why I think he's gonna kill me eventually. One time I made a Facebook post to add me on Snapchat, open to the public, and he added me. He actually made a Snapchat at the same time and only has added me. I can tell by looking at a score. A few weeks ago I blocked him on Facebook and told him to stop contacting me. He completely flipped out and was sending me pages and pages, calling me a liar and traitor because I needed to sleep one day and couldn't sit up and talk to him on Facebook. School had just started, and I was still working third shift at this point. It was 2 p.m., and I had just finished school, and I worked at 11. He saw me on Facebook checking my notifications before crashing, and that weekend sent pages of Facebook messages telling me that I wasn't a loyal friend. Then this week, a Snapchat from him. He rarely contacts me on Snapchat. I forgot I had added him. It was 5 snaps. All of them were of him firing off an AR-15. He's shown the target and his shoes were scarily accurate. It was fucking terrifying. Then he informs me that he's going to get his HSED at a place about 5 blocks away from my house and can't get a ride till a few hours after class and just roams the street from like 7 p.m. to 10 or 11 each night. He then asked me if he could come crash at my apartment on Thursday nights and spend the weekend with me and my roommate. I said nah, I work Thursday nights. And he went on this huge rant about how he's in love with my roommate and how I am his true family to him and it would mean the world. If he wanted, he could figure out my address through the gift he bought my roommate last Christmas. And he's sending me snaps of him shooting high-powered firearms with scary accuracy. I honestly don't think I've ever been more terrified in my life, but I think he's too slow to figure out where I live. Either ways, I need to figure out a way to get rid of this guy. If I get a restraining order, I'll just piss him off even more. Plus, I hate dealing with the police anyways, so I'm gonna be on no police contact probation soon. Scary internet wacko. Let's not meet. Random weirdo who licked me. So this happened in 2014. I, being a teenage girl, was looking in a pharmacy, sniffing different perfume and looking at cheap makeup. As I was leaving the store to head back to the grocery store, which was a few stores down the road to meet my mom, a man looking about maybe 35 to 40 years old walked up to me and started talking to me. He said his name was Michael. He asked me if I had a boyfriend and I said yes. He then said that he would be a boyfriend that my boyfriend Everett would be. I told him I had to go, and that's when he grabbed my arm, pulled me in, and licked the side of my cheek. I screamed as loud as I could, and he let me go and bolted away. I found my mom, and we contacted the police. It turns out This man had escaped from a mental institution a few streets away and was on the sex offenders list. So, creepy face licker, let's not meet again. I was 14 at the time. Never pee alone on a lonely gravel road. So, I've sat here all day reading a lot of Let's Not Meet posts, and some of them brought up memories of an extremely scary time I had a couple years ago. I was driving back to my college from my family's house after visiting them. I was traveling through a rural area in the Midwest, and I suddenly had the urge to pee badly. I was reading all the road signs I came across to see if there was a nearby town that I could stop at to find a gas station or something to use their restrooms. Unfortunately, the nearest town was 30-ish miles away, and I had to pee so badly. It was unbearable. I finally made the decision to get off at the next exit that I found, even though they don't lead to any towns. Shortly after I pulled off on the next exit, I came across a gravel road. I thought this was perfect because I didn't want to get in trouble for exposing myself in front of anybody. It was a very private road. So, just so you're all aware, I am a female. It is very difficult for females to pee on the side of the road. I thought the best course of action would be to take my empty McDonald's cup and pee into that. I did just that inside of my car, just in case anyone drove down the lonely road. I had finished my business and dumped the cup into the grass on the side of the road. I was starting my car and getting ready to turn my car back around the way I came when I saw a bright red car speeding down the road I was on. It startled me, but they drove right on past. I thought to myself, must be the locals messing around. I started to drive off and I saw a dingy, rusted red pickup truck coming down the road after the car. They too drove past me. As they passed through, I saw two male passengers who were staring straight at me. This freaked me out, but I told myself, all the more reason to get a move on. I still kept my eye on the pickup truck, though, and I saw them turning around, coming straight at me. This freaked me out so much, I decided the best course of action would be to drive in their direction, continuing on the gravel road as opposed to turning around, giving them opportunity to chase after me. I drove right by them again and saw that they were grinning at me. I was so scared I hit the gas, which on gravel road doesn't do much good. I finally got a grip on the road and headed along the gravel road. I looked in my rearview mirror, and they were following me again. I was freaked out. My hands were shaking, my foot was flooring the accelerator, and I reached for my phone. Now, I'm not the person to call 911 in just any situation. In fact, I was scared to call 911 because I was afraid I was just being paranoid. But as I looked in my rearview mirror again and saw them gaining on me, I called the police. When I called the police, the operator picked up and I explained to her what was happening. During this phone call, the men in the pickup truck were so close that I couldn't see their front tires. I was sliding all around the gravel road, trying to stay on the phone with the operator. She was giving me directions to the nearest town several miles away. They followed me the entire way there, all the way until I reached the police station. I saw them turn around very quickly because they knew I was out of their reach. I definitely learned my lesson from this, and I think from now on, I'll stick to peeing in public restrooms. So, creepy men in the pickup truck, let's not meet again. My trip to Applebee's. First of all, I'm a 22-year-old male. I'm a little stocky and muscular, but not fat. Not somebody you would try to actively avoid in a dark alley anyways, but also not someone you would really want to pick a fight on. Pretty average guy anyways. Before this starts to sound like your typical dating profile, let me begin. I was with my girlfriend, and it was around 10 p.m. at night, so it was dark outside. We left a friend's house to meet some other friends at an Applebee's about 20 minutes away. We pulled out of the driveway and started driving. About 3 minutes down the road, I noticed a large truck following us very closely. It swerved a little bit, but the driver didn't seem drunk. The speed limit was 45 miles per hour, and I was going a solid 50 miles per hour, so it was a fairly straight road, and not many cars were on it. The driver then started flashing his lights. This is normally a pretty universal sign that either my lights are off, he wants me to pull over, or I'm not driving adequately. I recently had my car inspected and passed, so it wasn't the lights. I was driving just over the speed limit, and there was no way that I was pulling over. Plus, it was a passing area, so he could have passed if he wanted to. I kept driving. He was literally right behind me. Not like 15 or 20 feet, but like right behind me. There was no other cars around, so I decided to just start taking side roads. I knew the area pretty well, so I was confident. Meanwhile, my girlfriend just wanted Applebee's, classic girlfriend. So I took some random side road, and of course, he followed right behind me, still flashing his lights. I kept turning into other roads, trying to lose him, but he was staying right on my tail. Finally, my girlfriend realized how weird this was and began getting a little nervous. I was nervous too. Our area has high crime rates, and some gang initiations involving running people off the road, forcing people to pull over and shooting them, and other car-related mumbo-jumbo. So we were both quite scared that this could be the case. I kept taking side roads, and he kept staying right behind me. Finally, we arrived at a Walmart. This Walmart has a back road where the trucks go to unload. I took the turn onto this road without even using my blinkers, still trying to lose him. I ended up driving out to 80 miles per hour on the small back road, but he literally did not stop. The small road wraps around to the main parking lot, and I skipped all stop signs and ignored all safety rules of the road. Thanks to the fluorescent Walmart lights, I was able to see that the truck was red and beaten down. I could see Applebee's in the distance, so I decided that I would park and just deal with this like a man. At this point, my girlfriend was actually tearing up. This whole ordeal may not sound that scary, but trust me, it was. Once we pulled into the Applebee's parking lot, I noticed that the red truck was no longer following us. He just disappeared. I looked at my girlfriend for like 4 seconds to comfort her, and when I looked up, he was gone. This was honestly terrifying. I pulled up to Applebee's to meet my friends inside, and they could tell that we were visibly shaken up. We were so shaken up that we didn't even get any food to eat, even though we were super hungry at the time. I managed to glance out the window and saw the same red truck, parked 3 or 4 rows behind out our car, just sitting there with the lights on. I had enough. I grabbed a steak knife from the table and went outside to find out what was going on. When I got to the truck, the same truck that was following me around, nobody was inside. The back seat was full of duct tape, random tools, tarp, and other everyday items that seemed especially creepy at the time. I took pictures of the license plate and waited around for the owner to return, but he didn't. There's no doubt he saw me waiting by his truck, sweatshirt hood up, looking like a weirdo. I called the police, let them know what was happening, and left it at that. I was told to be very careful, as gang initiations were starting to pick up speed in our area. The truck was the same one that followed me around, and yes, it could have just been some teens trying to be funny. But don't mess with me, my girlfriend, or Applebee's. So, Mr. Truck Driver who ruins appetites and may want to kill me. Let's not meet. Crazy Macy. This is my third and final creepy story. To give a basic summary, the events of this story occurred between September 2014 and June 2015. It may not be as creepy as my first 2 stories, but still, it's still about someone I would rather not ever meet again. Warning, this story is really long. So, the story starts early September last year. I just started a new course at college. I'd been there for about 2 weeks. At this point in time, I was in a relationship with a girl called Katie, but things were quite rough between us, and our relationship was on the rocks. I didn't stay in college. Instead, I took a bus provided by the college from my hometown. The bus journey was about an hour long, but I had a relatively large group of friends on the bus, so it wasn't too bad. I would get the bus there and the bus back. Summary over, and on with the story. On my second or third week in college, I was chilling at the bus stop with my friend group, waiting for the bus to arrive at the end of the day to take us home. I glanced over and saw a guy shouting at a girl just outside the bus stop. I didn't know either of them, but I recognized the girl as someone who gets on my bus. The next moment, I saw the guy punch the girl in the face. Now, I'm a bit of a white knight with this kind of thing, and I immediately got up and approached the guy. I told him that he was out of order, and he started squaring up to me and pushing me back. I told him to calm down. He swung at me, and being an MMA fighter, I immediately blocked, countered, and restrained him. I threw him to the floor. He got up and attempted to attack me again, so I just decided to plant a few jabs in his face. He eventually gave it up and walked away. The girl thanked me and told me her name was Macy. Now, our bus is a double-decker. Most people sit at the bottom, but me and my friends sit at the top deck. We're just us, and the shavs at the back. There tends to be less people on the top deck, so we each get a seat to ourselves. The seats are arranged in sets of 3, and we all tend to lie across them, so naturally, we don't like people sitting next to us. Anyways, Macy ends up sitting in the seat right next to me on the bus. I took the window seat. There were 3 seats to a row, but rather than sitting one over, she sits in the middle seat, so she's right next to me. She talks to me on the bus journey home, and to be polite, I chat back. She tells me the guy that punched her was called Jordan, and it was because he claimed they had a one-night stand and she denied it. She told me she had 4 celebrity boyfriends, Will Smith, Ryan Reynolds, Cameron Dallas, and said she was currently dating Dylan O'Brien. I found this hard to believe, as she wasn't very good looking. She was short, incredibly fat, coated herself in makeup, so she looked like a Oompa Loompa, and her hair was really greasy. The entire way home, she wanted to talk about herself. I immediately discovered that she was an incredibly depressing person. If I tried to change the subject into something about me, she would immediately switch it back to a subject which would draw attention or sympathy to herself. She wouldn't let me talk to any of my friends either. She would immediately interrupt and talk over them. After about half an hour in the bus with her, I started to feel suffocated. After getting off the bus, she stayed on as she said hers was the next stop. As I walked off, my friend Kyle approached me. He told me that he had been out with her around a year ago and told me to avoid her. He said that she was crazy, and after they broke up, him and his friends nicknamed her Crazy Macy. I was soon to find out why. She added me on Facebook that night, and I accepted out of politeness. She actually seemed okay on Facebook. She wasn't as self-obsessed and seemed to be interested in knowing more about myself. I told her some stuff about me. I told her about my relationship, the things that's been going on, and she kept telling me that I deserved someone better, and that I should end things with Katie. About 2 days later of awkward conversations with her about Katie on the bus, I started to find her very intruding. She seemed to want to know every detail about me and Katie's relationship. I didn't want to expose too much, as it was private stuff between me and Katie, and it was nobody else's business. I explained this to her, and that just seemed to irritate her. She asked me to give her Katie's number, and I refused. She then began telling me that I was wasting my time with Katie, and I should just give up and find someone who cares. That night, she sent me a message on Facebook, telling me that she had fallen in love with me, and that she'd been dreaming of us being together, and had decided that we were meant to be. She said she knows that I love her too, and she can sense love in people. I told her that I didn't, and that I saw her just as a friend. She told me that she knew I was lying. I told her that I wasn't lying, I loved Katie. She said that I needed to get away from Katie, and then I would see that my heart lies with her. I had no feelings for Macy whatsoever, but she kept insisting that I did, just telling me that I needed more time to realize it, and that she could sense that we were meant to be together. This is when she decided that she wanted me. She messaged Katie on Facebook and copied and pasted my first conversation with her about Katie. She then told Katie that I'd said that I was planning on leaving her because I wanted to be with Macy. This caused a very big argument on the phone between me and Katie, and we broke up. I was really upset after this, as I had very strong feelings for Katie. Macy could obviously tell I was upset. She approached me and immediately hugged me. She told me that she would always be there for me, and that now I wasn't with Katie, I could finally be with her. I pushed her away and told her to never speak to me again. And this is where things got creepy. Throughout October and November, she was harassing me with messages, just saying things like, "Hey, hi, you there? Where are you? Why won't you speak to me? Hello?" Which I finally ignored. Then she started putting things like, "I've had such a bad day, please reply. I need someone right now." I knew she was playing the sympathy card and continued to ignore her. By December time, she started sitting opposite me on the bus. She would often just stare at me. My friend Laura would often tell me that Macy was just staring at me, and I would just avoid eye contact with her. It made my bus journeys very unnerving. A few days later, in early January, I fell asleep on the bus. As we were getting off the bus, my friend Carl told me that Macy had been taking pictures of me while I was asleep. That ended up being one of the few times I messaged her. She admitted that she had taken pictures of me, and I asked her to send them to me. There were around 50 to 20 pictures of me just sleeping. I asked why she had taken them, and she said I look cute when I'm asleep. She was attempting to make jokes about the situation, despite the fact that I was incredibly pissed off. I told her to delete the pictures, and she told me she would. On the second week of January, I ended up going on vacation for a week. Now, I'm not trying to sound arrogant or brag, but I feel that I'm a relatively good-looking guy, and I knew there were 3 girls, Ellie, Mel, and Natalie, that all had a crush on me in college. While I was away, Laura phoned me after she got home to tell me of a scenario that had played out on the bus. Natalie had admitted to a few other girls that she had a crush on me, and that she was planning to ask me out when I was back off my holiday. Apparently, Macy jumped up and grabbed Natalie by the throat and said, "Back off, he's mine." She then announced publicly on the bus that me and her were dating, but we were keeping it secret until things went a bit further. I got back and found that almost the whole college thought that me and Macy were dating. My 2 friends, Taylor and Beth, told me that they thought I hated Macy. So I got so fed up of this rumor that I told everyone that it wasn't true. She refused and said that she had told people so that nobody else would try to take me from her. She said that we were destined to be together, and that it is important that she doesn't lose me to someone else. So irritated by this, I decided to post a public status on Facebook, which I tagged her in, a status which I will now copy in here. Just to inform everyone, me and Macy are not dating. We never were, and we never will. She has asked me out on several occasions, and each time I have rejected her. I advise that anything she says about me you ignore, as she is a compulsive liar. Thanks, guys. Now, I'm not the type of person that embarrasses people publicly for the attention, but I felt that this was an essential into putting her off of me. It didn't, though. Despite being tagged in it, she seemed to ignore the status. She would still sit opposite of me and stare at me, except this time with a look of hatred on her face. I would often get Carl or Laura to sit on the end seat so that they were between us, and so that she would stop staring at me. Now, one of the other girls had a thing for me, Melanie, was not very attractive at all. She was overweight to the point of being obese. She got this horrible looking ginger hair and lots of spots. But despite her appearance, she is an incredibly nice person, and quite possibly one of my best friends in college. Now, I am very protective of my friends. One day, Mel was sitting 2 seats over from me on the bus, and she confided and told me that she liked me. I saw Macy's face immediately turn into a look of complete malice as she looked at Mel. I told Mel that I liked her as a friend, but didn't see her as anything more. Macy then jumped up and blurted out, "Of course! You wouldn't go out with an ugly, fat, ginger pube mess like yourself. Look in the mirror, and then look at who you're trying to get with. He's 10 times out of your league, and you could never, ever be good enough for someone like him." I then stood up, incredibly frustrated, and said something along the lines of, "How dare you speak to my friend like that? You can criticize her for her looks all you want, but at the end of the day, it's the inner beauty that counts. You could be the best looking girl in the world, but also be a horrible person, and I would still choose her over you any day. And do you know why? Because she is a better person than you'll ever be." Macy just stared at me with all the way home. Didn't say a word. Just stared with these angry eyes. She got off the bus and followed me home. I was walking home with Laura. I was incredibly creeped out. as Macy was supposed to get off at the stop. She was walking behind by about 15 to 20 meters, not even trying to be stealthy. We arrived at Laura's house, and Laura agreed to let me come in with her until Macy was gone. Her boyfriend Caleb was there too, who I'm pretty good friends with, and we pretty much sat there and played COD Zombies for about 3 hours before I left to go home for dinner. After 3 hours, I assumed it would be safe. I was wrong. The second I got around the corner to go to my house, I saw Macy emerge from a nearby side street and start walking behind me. I picked up the pace and got to my house as quickly as possible. I had dinner and chilled out for a little while. 20 to 30 minutes had passed. I was attempting to play League of Legends, but the light from my window was shining on my crappy old glass monitor. I got up to close the curtains, and as I looked out the window, she was still there, sat across the road as if she was waiting for me. I'm not sure how long she stayed, but I remember checking a short while later and she was gone. Later that night, I got a phone call from Laura. Apparently, Macy had messaged Caleb and told him that Laura had been cheating on him with me, and that she'd been going into her house earlier that day, and she said that she heard sexual noises from the bedroom window. Callum just laughed and told her that he had been at Laura's house since she got home from college. I came around and played Call of Duty with them and nothing else. A few days later, she posted a status on Facebook saying, "Person I want to marry, Jay. Person who wants to stop me, Sarah." This caused an incredibly big argument on Facebook between me and my ex Sarah, as Macy had told both of us that the other one had told her to post it, as we wanted to be reunited apparently. After we both discovered that Macy had done this to cause trouble, she deleted the status and claimed she had never posted anything like that. In April, she got a new boyfriend called Ben, and I ended up getting a new girlfriend just a few days before called Sophie. When I first got with Sophie, she told me that it was unfair. She said that she had broken up with Dylan O'Brien, the guy from The Maze Runner, to be with me, and that because of all that she had done for me, I owed her, and that I could pay her back by just trying in a relationship with her. She told me that it didn't have to last, just to try for a few months. I refused, and then a few days later she just got with Ben. She was with Ben for about 2 weeks before they broke up, and she told him that she had cheated on him with me. Ben approached me, and I explained to him that nothing had happened. Macy was just a freaking lunatic. I eventually found out that Macy had only dated Ben because he was a former friend of Sophie's, and she had used him to get a hold of Sophie's phone number. First, she began texting me, saying that Sophie had a reputation for sleeping around, and that I should really consider staying away from her. I had blocked Macy at this point on Facebook, but my friend Jamie had told me that Macy was posting statuses about me and Sophie with both of our names in it. One of these was, "I can't believe Jay would choose Sophie, a girl who would give him an STD over me, a girl who would give him the world." She eventually began messaging Sophie, telling her that I'd been cheating on her, with Macy, and that she felt bad for Sophie and wanted to come clean. I had already warned Sophie about Macy at the time, so Sophie simply ignored her. She began messaging Sophie, calling her a slut and a whore, and telling her she knew about her bad reputation. What makes us silly is that Sophie had only ever had one boyfriend before me, and they broke up due to him physically assaulting her and being incredibly controlling. That incident has seriously put her off relationships, and she is still a virgin. Therefore, we know that Macy is trying to cause trouble. Last month, she began messaging Sophie, telling her that she was going to slit her throat and burn her house down. She mentioned what car Sophie drives, as well as the number plates, and began telling Sophie that she was going to ram her off the road into a ditch. We took these messages to the police, and I explained the whole situation I was having with Macy, and we were able to file a restraining order against her. The court case came by within a few days, which was good, as there was no long waiting process. It was also very brief. She has been expelled from the college due to my reports on her, and for over a month, I have heard no word from her. The day after the court case with the restraining order, I got home from a day out with Sophie to find that my car had been severely dented on the back. Our house's kitchen windows were smashed from the inside. The inside of the house had been ransacked. The shed door had been kicked off the hinges, and our cat appears to have taken a blunt force attack and has several broken ribs. A single note was left in the middle of the floor in the kitchen. It had been typed out on a computer and printed off, so there was no way of tracing the handwriting, but it just said, "I always get what I want." The police were unable to convict Macy, as Macy is denying the incident, and she has an alibi to confirm her whereabouts at the time of the break-in. But I still believe that she is responsible. She often told me that she had an uncle who was on the run from the law, who she could get to do stuff, and he would always get away with it. So I'm under the impression that he may have had something to do with this. And that's it. Not quite as creepy as what I've told before, but it still freaks me out to this day, and I'm constantly worrying that whoever it was that caused all the damage after the restraining order will come back, or even worse, go after Sophie. I'm still very unnerved at night, and the slightest noise makes me jump. I keep an old revolver in my bedside cabinet, just in case. P.S. While writing this, Macy just sent me a Snapchat of her playing with a toy lightsaber with her brothers, with a caption saying, "I'm Anakin Skywalker." Obviously, she has forgotten about this injunction. I'll be reporting it to the police tomorrow. Weird experience in the woods. Now, I don't know if this will sound scary through writing, but it definitely was if you were there. So a few years ago, I was cruising around with my brother, cousin, and a few friends. We decided to go down this creepy back road. We got to the end of it, and there was a trail that continued off of it. We decided to get out and walk the trail even though it was pitch black outside. We didn't really have a good feeling about the place, but we pressed on anyways. Now, let me say that if anyone else had come down the road, we would have seen their headlights in the woods. So, after walking for a little bit, we all went back to the cars. My friend Alex stopped and said, "What's that noise?" We all stopped talking and heard a hissing noise. The tires on his car had been slashed. We all panicked because nobody else would be at this dead-end road, in the middle of nowhere, this late at night. So we got in the cars and took off. Not far down the road, his car was undrivable, and we had to squeeze him into our Jeep. We went to a gas station to get some snacks, and when we came out, the Jeep's tires were slashed too. I don't know how that could have happened, so it seemed like someone had followed us and slashed our tires. So, creepy forest-dwelling tire slasher, let's not ever meet.